What's up, everybody? My name is Taylor Gray, and as a creative, I wear a lot of different hats, but one of the things I enjoy most is preaching and teaching at my local church here in the city where I live. So during all of the time where I spend in a pulpit, if you want to call it that, I am able to unpack a whole lot of different things, a whole lot of subjects, a whole lot of topics, but I often don't have time to talk about everything that we really could talk about. So that's why we're here, because I've got time today.
You can make it, Daddy.
So I want to welcome you to the I've Got Time Today podcast, where we will do our best to try to unpack all things social, satirical, and spiritual. And really, at the end of the day, I'm just glad I have a place where I can get some bars off. So I hope that you enjoy our time today as we try to take a nuanced approach. But today, I'm going to let you know what I'm passionate about. First and foremost, before we get into any content, I want to thank those of you who are tuning in. I want to thank Upper Cup Coffee for powering this podcast. They did not submit any dollars or any financial sponsorship, but literally I'm running off the energy of the coffee beans that come from one of my favorite places in Columbus to support Upper Cup Coffee. And as we continue doing episodes, I'm going to try my best to promote some other local businesses and people who I think are really cool to support. So before we get into our subject for today, I just want to let you know my expectation for frequency of the podcast. I would like to provide this podcast on a monthly basis to start out, but I really want to open it up to you guys, because at the end of the day, if we want to do more than once a month, then I'm going to need some help. So I want to give you the opportunity, if you are a supporter of mine, you followed me for a while, you listen to the music, you support me in other ways, and you just want to support this platform, I want to give you my Cash App and my PayPal, because I'm the one paying out of my pocket for this. And this is all an individual effort to try to provide some different content. So if you would like to support, if you would like to see this podcast be presented with some more frequency, you can support me via the Cash App option or the PayPal option that you see in front of you. And I want to thank my homie Mike for producing this episode and the other episodes that will come in the early part of this year. And this is something that I'm doing for the first time, so I hope that it hits home. So now that we've gotten all of this out of the way, what I'd like to do is introduce the first topic of the year. All right, so today's topic, it's a good one. I think it's a great way to start our time together. I've called it Why I Don't Call Myself a Christian. Why I don't call myself a Christian. Now, out the gate, I know you're hearing that and you're like, okay, how can we even proceed in a productive way from here? Well, let me just let you know, there's something about having a position of leadership as a pastor that makes you feel like you can't honestly talk about the journey that you're on. And I'm letting you know right now, I am personally on a journey with my faith. Even though I'm seen as a person who is supposed to be teaching and preaching practices that others should follow, I don't want to check out from the fact that I've got some things to learn myself. I've had to search within myself for the reasons why I believe what I believe. And the mainstream term for that, good or bad, I'll say, I leave that up to you, is deconstruction. I have, as a pastor, been going through a deconstruction process. There are other pastors who are going through deconstruction processes, even though they may or may not admit that to you. This is, I believe, just a part of personal development. It's a way to be self-aware about the things that you have believed throughout your life, and then give yourself space and opportunity to reconsider those things with new information, with new experiences. For me, COVID hit like a ton of bricks, and I think for many of us, it gave us space and opportunity just to reevaluate what's on the table, just to reevaluate what has captured our minds, our hearts, our attention. So for me, the deconstruction process has led me to this place where I can firmly say for myself that I no longer identify as a Christian. A Christian. This deconstruction is something that I think is healthy. What does it mean to be Christian, or what does Christianity mean? It's a powerful conversation to have in many different spaces. And this conclusion that I've come to is something that I've really thought through. I've really taken time and attention in prayer and conversation, and really just kind of a lot of self-reflection. Being a father of two unique kids and answering their questions, just all kinds of things that have challenged me, including Dr. Umar. So it's it's something that I can go a wide range with and try to land on something solid, so I be prepared to give an answer for my faith in the things that I believe in. So to set the stage, I just want to let you guys know I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I'm not just trying to gain attention through argument. I'm not just trying to gain attention through controversy. I'm not just trying to say something different than what most people are saying. I'm trying to take on a careful and honest investigation of what I believe and why. So that's the deconstruction process for me. I don't know what it is for you, but I know that to unpack certain things or to deconstruct certain things that have been built in my life for the purposes of reevaluating the foundation has been helpful for me. Hopefully it has been for you as well. So the precise language I want to use to say how I self-identify in this life, in this season of life, and probably will be solid here for some time, is that I am a follower of the way of Jesus. I'm a follower of the way of Jesus. I'm going to start with scripture. My goal in a lot of the conversations I have at the church and beyond, if there's just a place of clarity, if there's a conversation that involves some controversy and some nuance, and we're looking for some spiritual answers, we're looking to tap into a spiritual progression of understanding and practice, then I like to start with the scriptures. I still think the scriptures are really helpful for us. I still think that we haven't tapped into the full potential of what is in scripture to make it relevant, to make it applicable to our lives. And so I'm gonna just tell you right now, that's one thing that hasn't changed about me, is I still open up the scriptures to find some meaning. You look in the New Testament and you're done reading the Gospels and you come to whatever conclusion you come to about Jesus, you get to actually see how it plays out, how these early followers, these first disciples, these 12 people who were ostracized from society, how they were going to take their next steps after their leader, their teacher, their savior was no longer with them. And what many folks call the early church is a representation of how these young people were trying to figure out for themselves what they believed and how it was going to look in society. As they were given courage and as they were given supernatural instruction and ability to carry on the message, they started to develop a reputation. And if you look in the book of Acts, I'll give you two specific points of reference, Acts 9:2 and Acts 11:26. You can compare how they were being identified in society. And some of the earliest language that was used to look at these folks who were saying all of these revolutionary, for some, I guess it wasn't revolutionary for everybody, but crazy things that had never been heard at the time. And people who were so passionate, devoted to a belief system that had not been established in that society at that time. They were being looked at from afar with suspicion, with intrigue, with controversy, and they would tell the people who they had gathered as an audience that we are followers of the way. We are followers of the way. And that is the way that they were able to interact with society around this message that they called the gospel, the good news. So where do we get Christian from? Where did the term Christian first emerge? Well, it emerged as an insult. It emerged as a pejorative term. It emerged as something that you could blow off in casual conversation because you don't want to be seen as a person who's in a cult, someone who is a part of something crazy that's ultimately going nowhere. It will not have influence. It will not have lasting power in society. And so at the end of the day, this band of rebels who referred to themselves as followers of the way of Jesus, had a self-determination as to who they would be called and how they would be identified. And then they had a reputation in society that gave other people freedom to develop their own language. And from that, they were called Christians. Christ is at the center of all of this, but there was still some controversy as to who he really was. So looking at that as a point of history, to look at the earliest form of the church and this gathering of believers who had a mission to serve and bring a message of salvation to save people, to be followers of the way gave some definition to their belief system, because they were implicitly and explicitly saying that there was a way to live. There was a way to be saved. There is a way to provide evidence as to transformation and a different approach to love and service to your fellow man in this world. Christianity becomes a term that transitions from a distant insult to a place of political power and social influence. The way you can trace that is back to a brother by the name of Constantine. He probably wasn't really a brother by the sense of ethnicity, but he, as an institution of the Roman government, was in a position of power to influence our thinking today about the term Christian and the application of Christianity in society. Please feel free to do your Googles about Constantine. We are not going to go through a history lesson about him, but I will say it's probably a good place to start when you want to understand how Christianity gained power and influence across the world. And I don't necessarily say, matter of fact, I don't say at all that this power and influence was good for the rest of the world. Essentially, Christianity became a state religion. It became an institution of government by which people were converted by force, by which people were able to ascend society in certain ways of social influence, because the ruling authority at the time associated himself as a Christian. Of course, what do people in power do? They are not content to self-identify, but they want to control other people. So now the rest of society had to identify with Christianity. It was probably the Roman Empire's newest wave of application in, I would say, this colloquialism of get down or lay down. You have to accept this or you're going to die. You have to accept this or be outcast. And it became an institution and an influence of society by force. So, given these two histories, I don't want to identify with get down or lay down, religion or die, this religion, this expression of religion, or you are an outcast, or you are a social pariah in the sense that you don't really give me the option to think for myself. I am just basically being influenced by the powers that be. Throughout history, this played out. The term Christian played out in church history in a number of different ways. And I'm not going to go through all of the centuries of how this looked, but I can fast forward today into American society. What it means to be a Christian is so complicated. It's so heavy. You can see very early on why people would either want to be associated or disassociated. And I would make the case to say that more and more people want to be disassociated. I don't care if it's older folks. I don't care if it's younger folks. People don't really want to be aligned with this term because of how it has been used and applied in our society. And colonialism, this violent introduction to Christianity as a means of warfare, as a means of conquest, as a means of establishing settlements and societies and obliterating others. I can just quite frankly think about, as a black man in black history in particular, there were efforts to so-called convert slaves into Christianity, where you would be seen as a person who could, I guess, receive a consideration as a human being just by being converted. If you do not, then you are a deviant, you are less than human and deserve to be treated cruelly. So the means of converting to Christianity was just to be likable, just to be seen in a positive light. It wouldn't change your social circumstance, but maybe you got a little bit more polite treatment from your master. Or maybe you got a little bit more break time from the fields. Maybe you got to go into the house and learn how to read a few words. Any structure that espouses Christianity as its firm foundation for language and for teaching, without any consideration of the nuance or an expanded view of how it could be a harmful representation, is not looking at history honestly. I think a lot of these Christian institutions, just by nature of history and application, are not credible. And they can die on the hill of Christianity and Christendom and evangelical presentation, fundamentalism. You can name all of these terms, but it leads back to oppression, 100%. And power structures do what they are designed to do: oppress. We're not thinking about free will choice. We're talking about power systems influencing people to get down or lay down. And so I don't want to be associated with that. That's not even who Jesus was, and a careful inspection of who he actually is and what the message is doesn't associate with that either. So the term Christian is loaded, it's complicated. It has been mechanized for political power. We've seen that most recently in presidential elections that say this is the Christian vote and this is the non-Christian vote. And I'm sorry, like, the way we live is just not that binary. It's a lot more nuanced and a lot more complicated, and a lot of people are lying and faking. So more on that in a future podcast. But I just want to just be clear. This is a reason to deconstruct. This is a reason to reevaluate what you think and what you believe and how it plays out in society and in relationships. Power and race are constructs that used Christianity to control people. And I think that we have to be honest about that in order to proceed as a representation of who Christ really was and who he calls us to be. Not just what he calls us to do, but it has to flow out of how we identify who we truly are. And if we associate his power with the power to create the known world, to create societies, and give human beings the capacity to think and consider and make decisions with a source and a sense of agency, then we have to make sure we're coming out of good motives, that we can actually have a good handle on what is good. And I think we should reevaluate Christianity as a general term, because what a lot of folks will not tell you, and they really don't want to talk about, is how Christianity is not just owned by America. It's not just owned by the system that has the most power and money behind the message to influence the rest of the world as to what they should think. We do mission trips all the time, espousing and promoting this idea of Christianity that comes from a subjective perspective that is most closely tied to oppression, slavery, manipulation, and political power, when we should be taking a more global perspective into account as a representation or an accurate representation of the mission of Christ. And so I've been deconstructing my way back into Africa and the old African traditions, the Ethiopian traditions, the way that the message of Christ traveled down through early and ancient Africa, down the river to Alexandria and Egypt and other ancient cities of commerce, who were hearing the disciples and missionaries share the message in the way of Christ, and it played out on the African continent in a different way than has been presented in the Western world. So being on the Eastern side of things and looking at geography and history just causes you to come away with a whole lot of questions about what you learned and how you learned it. So again, my deconstruction process is leading somewhere. I don't want to just encourage deconstruction for deconstruction's sake, but where I am going with this is to reconstruct something that I feel like I can still stand on, something that has verifiable reality, not just something I'm passionate about. And then once I'm challenged, once I'm critiqued in valid ways, I don't really have anything to stand on outside of how much power and money and resources behind what I'm saying is true. From a heart place, if you're going to deconstruct personally, you should be able to reconstruct with some sincerity what you believe, why you believe it, and how you're going to live. So that's my main goal today, is to let you know how I self-identify. With all of this being said, I don't want to control or try to manipulate how you identify me. I don't want to give this impression that I'm here to argue about the way language is used if you're speaking subjectively for yourself. I'm here to let you know where I stand. And I still am a pastor. I still am teaching from the scriptures. But I think from a generational perspective, we're at a crucial point in this country where our younger folks are being exposed to more information than ever. They can research everything you're saying. They're not going to just sit there and listen to you and take it in. So you got to have some reasons for why you call what you call truth and goodness can stand and actually be experienced in the known world. So for me, my reconstruction process has led me to say I'm a follower of the way of Jesus. And that way we can unpack what that way is and present it in a way that truly sounds like good news to the audience that we're able to gather. That's it. That's what I wanted to talk about today. That's how I wanted to get out the gate. And maybe this is controversial. Maybe this is a point of relief. If you're processing the same thing, hopefully I can empower some folks out there to come up with their own language, to be able to stand on a firm foundation and be able to practice it with a clear conscience. Because that's really what my deconstruction process led to for me. And I look forward to what I reconstruct from here. So I want to close with an invitation for you to continue with me on my journey, because again, I'm still on a journey. This podcast is a platform for me to be able to get out my thoughts, my opinions, and really just offer some commentary beyond what may normally be explored in the social media space, in the podcast world. Before I leave planet Earth, I want to have some documented contributions on deck to be able to show either my kids or other people who I come in contact with over the course of time what my journey looks like. And I love the fact that we can record and document our thoughts in the seasons of life that we're in. So that's my hope today. Thank you for tuning in. I had time today. I'm going to have time going forward, and I hope that you stay tuned. God bless. Peace.